Oh, yes, it's recording. Right, perfect. Oh, okay. Okay, Stuart, welcome to the RMA Way podcast. Thanks very much for joining us. Much appreciated.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And just double checking that does seem to be recording. So,
yeah.
Okay, perfect. If not, we'll just have to try and fit it in another time. So
I can see it's recording.
Yeah, it's definitely perfect. Yeah, it's on my screen. Perfect. So technology is new this is new for me as well. So so like I say, perfect. So thanks for joining us on the RMA Way podcast.
Yeah, no,
much appreciated. I know your time's important to you.
Yeah, no, thanks.
What I'd like to start off, obviously, we're going to go into talking about martial arts, fitness, health. So your Silat journey, so your martial arts journey before then. We'll probably touch a little bit on your strength and conditioning, your PT side, how that fits in with your martial arts approach as well, if that's okay. But very much like yourself, so I like to take things on a more of an organic flowing approach. So we'll see where we go. So from there. Okay, so for everyone out there, can you just give us a little bit of background on yourself first of all?
Yeah, of course. So I started martial arts at age 18. So pretty much like most people, I was having situations where I grew up in a kind of a rough area. There was a need to kind of defend yourself. So my first original teacher was a guy called Winston Scott. He was a black belt under Bob Breen.
I know the name. I don't know him, but I know the name. So.
Oh, okay, yeah, he's a JKD guy. So I started my journey with JKD. So that was for I think around 3 to 5 years that I started with Winston. So yeah, the JKD was great. I never had to kind of use too much self-defense using it, but it definitely gave me that awareness.
Sure. Was that with did you train in purely the JKD side, or was that the JKD and the Kali?
It was a mixture. Yeah, it had the elements of the Filipino martial arts. It had obviously bits and pieces, grappling, you know, how to box. So Winston pretty much taught me how to punch. And it was kind of interesting at the time because it was me and my uncle that was doing it together. So we were kind of training partners. So we was getting in some good kind of amounts of training. We was taking our gradings up at Bob Breen's Academy in Hoxton. So yeah, we was doing really well with that. But I think it was 3 to 4 years after that, I kind of started getting into the kind of wrong crowds and kind of drifted away from martial arts for a year or two. And it wasn't until I kind of came across a video, a VHS of a Silat teacher that I kind of came across Silat. So it was kind of interesting, my journey on how I actually got into Silat. Because I actually it's an interesting story, I actually walked past a charity shop and actually saw a VHS video of this martial arts. And I was like, hang on a minute, that looks interesting. So I went in and bought it, took it home, watched it, and I was like, wow, this is absolutely amazing. This is something that I've been looking for a long time. And it turns out that the school that was actually teaching this, that was only 10 minutes from my house, and I knew nothing about it.
Right. It's crazy, isn't it, how some of these little places, they're there, but you just know nothing about them.
It was 10 minutes away, literally on the high road, and I was like, how the hell did I miss that? So I watched the VHS, absolutely loved it. Went down to the school, had my first lesson, and from there I was hooked on Silat. I think within the first year of training at the academy, I won Student of the Year. I was training 6 times a week, 3 times a day. I was having privates pretty much 3 times a week as well, on top of the regular kind of school curriculum. So I was really, really enjoying my journey.
Sure. Have you always been sort of like into sports, being active and everything like that as well? So
I
you've always
mean, I played professional football from the age of 13. My granddad was a football coach.
right.
He got me various different football trials with different football clubs, Watford, Tottenham. So yeah, I was very much into kind of sport from a young age, and I played some quite good kind of semi-mid-level football for quite a few years. But again, you know, it was a case of that kind of area that I grew up in. It was very easily to get led astray.
Sure. Yeah.
And quite a few times, you know, I kind of got taken away from the things that I really wanted to do. I think a lot of people are in that situation growing up in areas that, you know, have groups like that.
Yeah. Definitely. It's just like and it's still very much like the gang culture. It's
Yeah, it's obviously
even,
got a lot worse.
It's got a lot worse. That's it. So like it's always in the media now, and like I say, a lot of time you're almost like there's peer pressure to become part of that, isn't there?
Exactly. Even more so now. Yeah. Very, very different now.
And I suppose it's like, again, without wanting to get personal, that's probably like something that as a parent you're going to be worried about. So
of course, yeah, same with you.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So you worry about the crowds that anybody. I
mean, obviously, the life experiences that we've got, obviously, we can pass on kids and just hope, you know.
That's it. Absolutely. So, but let's not digress. Let's get back onto your journey. So,
so obviously for the first kind of year or two, the particular school was called East West Studios.
Yeah, I remember them. Yeah.
You remember it? Okay, cool.
Yeah,
there was, you know, there was a lot of martial artists that I recognise on like kind of Facebook now. A lot of their faces were there back in the day.
Yeah, they had a really big following. I spent a lot of time with a lot of exposure in the magazines as well, didn't they? They used to
get. Yeah, they were absolutely everywhere.
I think Martial Arts Illustrated, Bob Sykes used to train with Steve as well, and so it was like quite a lot of the guys back. So what you're talking, like, what would have that been? The early the 2000s?
Yeah, 2000,
yeah.
2003. I came across the school in 2003, I think. It was around about 2003. And I was there for at least 5-6 years before the school kind of closed down. I don't know the full story of why it closed down, but unfortunately it closed down, which was quite sad. And it wasn't until about 2013, 2012 that I kind of reconnected with my old teacher, who was Pandeka Stephen Benitez. And from my point of view, I feel he's one of the best Silat teachers in the world. His training is incredible. Pretty much anyone can relate to kind of how he teaches. He's an incredible teacher. And, you know, it was a real honor to be kind of one of his students. But I reconnected with him in 2013 because he had left the country prior to that. He was like moved to a different country. So I reconnected in 2013 where I was kind of training privately at his home. So it was kind of very traditional way of training. I would be training in his garden, and you know the sessions would go on for long. It was really, really interesting kind of training.
But with that sort of training, you're bound to have got a much deeper understanding of not only the technical but also the philosophical side of the training as well. Because obviously,
for sure, the Silat in general is quite a deep art. I mean, some people would say, it's spiritual. Some people can get a bit freaked out by that word. I've definitely seen people in the past get freaked out by that word.
Yeah.
But coming from the area that I came from, if you said that kind of word, I would get freaked out. But he put it in a way that it didn't freak me out. It kind of made sense to me. And it was, you know, the teachings that he would teach would tick every box question in my head of kind of where I wanted to go in life and what I was doing. It was very relatable. So it wasn't like that really wishy-washy kind of way of teaching.
Gotcha.
It was something you could really connect with. And I think the biggest way that I connected to it with it was through kind of physical movement. Because obviously I was a very kind of physical person with my sports and my martial arts. So the way that he was teaching it to me was kind of very physical movements, kind of through what we would call the sit-ups, the postures. So obviously my love for conditioning, when he would kind of pair the, if you want to call it spiritual side or the more esoteric side, with the kind of Silat sit-ups and postures and movement and conditioning, I could really relate to it. So I think that's kind of where my training in around 2015 started to really accelerate. I was literally teaching seminars in Europe, across Europe. You know, I was getting various messages, could I come and teach at different schools? So it was a really, really good time around 2015.
Was this under your CFW banner, or was this under your
So basically that was under it was called Satria Fighting Arts. It had basically had a few different names prior to that over the kind of past 10 years, but the way that my teacher kind of studied and took the information of what he was studying, it came into something called Satria Fighting Arts, which basically these warriors were called Kasatriyas, not to go too deep in it, but they were kind of protectors of the Dharma in the kind of Vedic era. And it's a lot different than the kind of Silat that you see predominantly now. There's quite a few differences, even from the parts of the greeting, the Semba. So there's lots of different sides to the Silat, to the kind of Satria Fighting Arts. But yeah, it was called Satria Fighting Arts. And the way kind of CFW came about was I was always known for obviously conditioning. So I got the nickname Conditioning Fighting Warrior. So it kind of stuck. But I think it was around 2018, I kind of felt that I kind of wanted to try and kind of go out there and see if I could connect with people from my own expression. Because I think a big thing in Penjak Silat is that, in any martial arts actually, is that you want to express it your way, and it's quite a unique way. I mean, yourself, as everyone, I think everyone.
Exactly, yeah, that's it. That's exactly what we've done, and especially if you've been in it for a length of period, you want to be able to express it in your way, because that's, if you're teaching it and you're teaching, it's like you want to be getting it across how you perceive it to be.
Yeah, definitely.
Because that's and
very unique, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and again, I guess that, but with your JKD background as well, that's probably very much sort of like that JKD approach. So, of you, which is obviously was a fundamental influence on your early progression into the martial arts. So it's gonna will probably affect you. Is going to be how you perceive it and want to carry it forward. So
for sure. I mean, an expression that I use a lot in some of my content is that I say it's your own unique signature, and that's what I've always liked to kind of use. It's your own unique signature of movement, of methodologies, of the way you communicate to people. It's your own unique signature, because obviously you can only learn so much from your teacher until it's time that you kind of express it your own unique way.
Yeah,
I think everyone's kind of been in that situation.
Definitely. Otherwise, it becomes too dogmatic, and it just becomes too robotic and sort of like. So none of us are the same. Even, that's it. So even identical twins aren't the same. So it's like there's different. There's different. We all move different. We don't move in different ways, but we move differently. So
exactly, you hit the nail on the head. It's like my kids are twins, and they've got completely different ways of looking at life. You know, they've got different likes, dislikes, but you know, it's exactly the same what you just said.
I'm a twin,
Oh,
and
nice. Oh, brilliant.
yeah,
Oh, there
so the slightly younger, better looking one, but
you go. Yeah.
that's all right. He
Typical
won't
twin
watch this.
behaviour.
Yeah, so he won't watch this, so it doesn't even
I love
matter. I can say what I want.
I think I'm going to say
But it's not even on Facebook. So,
I'll
but
find him, don't
we are so
worry.
we're very different. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's like he's even got a full head of hair. You know, it's like so.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Interesting.
but
Yeah.
I very like so. But like I say, so and that's human nature, isn't it? So,
Exactly. It's your own unique kind of expression. And I think what happens generally in life is that people try to dampen your expression, hence why people get frustrated,
mhm.
angry, sad. You know, you're supposed to express your own unique um, self. And I think that's what happens a lot. And it happens in martial arts, it happens in business world, it happens
Yeah.
everywhere. People try to put
Mhm.
that light out, that expression.
Mhm. Definitely. So, so you've kind of moving away now, and you're forming CFW, like so. Yeah.
So,
Um,
so
how then? Go on.
CFW has been growing for the past, I think, five years now. Um, so basically, as I said, it's my complete expression of kind of all the Silat teachings that I was taught from my teacher. CFW has kind of a full syllabus from start to finish, and currently I'm putting out the phases on our online course. So we're currently up to phase 3 at the moment, and there's various other add-ons that you could add to that. But in terms of the syllabus, we're currently at phase 3, which is the more kind of moving meditation side, because there's a huge aspect of Penjak Silat that is called the Kembangan. And not to go into too much detail, but it's the kind of library and the kind of catalogue and the kind of moving meditation of everything that you've learned in your journey in Silat. And that
Sure.
basically goes into one continuous flow of kind of motion. So that's currently where we're at with CFW Silat at the moment. We also have CFW Yoga that's kind of coming out now, which I've started to put some content up. We also have CFW Animal Movement, which is basically the sit-ups from the Silat, but put into kind of different ways of training that I've learned through strength and conditioning and through PT. So it's kind of more applicable to people that are fitness enthusiasts, also from other martial arts, but something you can dive straight into. Whereas the Silat condition is something more that needs a kind of a guided eye.
Sure.
The CFW animal movement is something you can kind of just jump straight into.
Just straight in and do.
Yeah, and have fun with it. And it's kind of like almost like an entry into the Silat conditioning, if you know what I mean. Kind of like just something to get you straight into it.
All right. So you'd get some of the, say, like the body weight exercises.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
But maybe with a Silat twist within it. So
exactly. I mean, I still call them the kind of positions in the Indonesian terminology, but something that I've noticed in the fitness world over the past kind of 5 years, how it's changed, and a lot of animal movement now is in the fitness world. It may have different names. So let's say kick throughs. That's where you put your hand on the floor and you're on the ground and you kick through. Well, in the Silat, we call that crutching, or we call it crutching changes. So it's very, very similar. And it's something that obviously people can kind of jump straight into. I kind of use the original terminologies of like the sit-ups, Indonesian sit-ups, which means sit-ups means postures. So that's how I've kind of used the PT and the strength and conditioning to kind of influence just a little bit of the kind of entry level Silat.
Excellent. So you say it's you're at the level the phase 3 part of the curriculum at the moment. How many phases do you have within your syllabus?
We have 10 phases.
Mm-hmm.
And do you want me to give you a little breakdown of each phase?
Yes. That'd be great for everybody.
Phase 1 is basically your conditioning. So from ground to upright. Okay, so this is usually your first 2 to 3 years of training.
Right.
That's your phase 1. So that's your basic conditioning. Then we go
Would you be able to use that conditioning in a practical application, or is it purely just conditioning?
As in self-defense aspect.
As in So because the majority of people, obviously, they start going into the two main reasons that people train martial arts or go into the martial arts: self-defense and fitness, isn't it? So sure, that's probably what. So and sort of like, as we get deeper into it, we know there's crossovers or areas that you might want to diverse into, but without kind of like trying to think of how other people might look at stuff, especially now because everyone's MMA.
Yeah.
Spending 2 to 3 years is that's very traditional. So I'm working on one approach. So and I understand it. So don't make it sound like
I know where you're coming from. Yeah. No.
Yeah. So, but people will be looking for application or but would that work in the street? So,
exactly. So I'll show you how it works. So basically, that phase 1 of conditioning covers something called kuching, harimal, buaya, gurat. And basically, how I've always kind of articulated this is the postures and the conditioning is actually the martial art, and it's something a few people at first couldn't kind of get their head around. But the sit-ups, the postures are actually the martial art. It's kind of like not a hidden way of training, but a really sophisticated way of training. So rather than going and doing 100 burpees and then going to do shadow boxing, the sit-ups are actually the martial art. So while you're doing that conditioning, you're actually learning how to defend yourself, but also how to condition yourself without having to come out of it. And I think that's how you accelerate so quick with that phase 1, is because you're learning both at exactly the same time. So usually with the conditioning, I might bring out things like I might bring out the pisau, the knife. So I might enhance a particular conditioning drill with the knife. So there is various different methods that I do use with that phase 1. But I know completely where you're coming from. That is a very old school way of training where you'd have a student. I mean, to be fair, that was how I was trained in 2013. I was literally left in the horse stance for 30 minutes to an hour. Some of the students were going up to 4 hours. I mean, that was a very old kind of way of training, and I completely understand that that's not applicable for.
You see it in other arts, though, don't you? So that approach. So it's like you'll find that in kung fu, in traditional karate, where you're holding stances, and in a more dynamic, or you're just a whole session just spent practicing footwork, for instance. So
that's obviously quite tedious for some people.
Exactly. That's it. It's like not approach that everybody wants to do, and even now you'll find. So that's it. Variety is spice of life, isn't it? So people want different. So and they want. It's like we live in the society these days is very much like, well, I've done it for 10 minutes. What can we do now?
Do I get my 7-day free trial, and can I cancel within 2 days?
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
But I think that's the way that I've always kept the kind of phase 1 interesting, and that is by kind of introducing different training methodologies, but also elements of self-defense in there as well, because the art goes so deep, and it doesn't get complicated, it gets sophisticated. You know, that phase one grows into a really sophisticated way of moving. So once you've kind of done that phase one, you kind of go into phase one kind of part two, which is the self-defense, but on a more detailed level. So it just gets more sophisticated. So that's usually the first 3 to 5 years. And we would call that bumi, which means ground. So the first 3 to 5 years is usually Semba and ground training. So that's your kind of first few stages. Then we go into the kind of upright phase, which is phase 2. We call that lunka. So lunka means footwork. So that is your kind of phase 2, and then that gets even more sophisticated. We bring out things like the krumbit, you know, the knife, and there's lots of various different drills that kind of link the ground and upright together. So you're kind of moving in a continuous flow of motion, no stopping, no pulling back. So you should be conditioned, your awareness should be expanded. So both of those kind of phase 1 and 2 are a self-defense system in itself. So that 3 to 5 years. And then it just gets more sophisticated. So more layers. We go into the kind of Kembangan phase, which is the phase that I have on the online content so far, which, as I said, is your library of movements, your catalogue of movements, but it's also a moving meditation. So this is where the kind of holistic part comes into the art, and it kind of gets even more deeper. So from phase 3 we go into more weapons, which phase 4 is the krumbit. So
going back, would you say that's sort of like almost when you're introducing or promoting a meditation phase within the program?
Exactly, because I think the kind of Silat that I was taught, obviously from the era that it was from, you know, it was very kind of known as something called Kajawan, which had elements of Hinduism, and so there's a lot of meditation aspects to this particular type of Silat. So one of the first kind of meditation exercises would be just what my teacher called medicine 1, and that is to just basically sit still and kind of try to clear your mind, and kind of try to just focus on clearing out all the noise. Then there was a meditation exercise called the green leaf meditation exercise. Not to go into too much detail, but because there's many different methods of meditation. I mean, you could go on for hours. But the first kind of physical meditation that you're taught is the Kembangan, and that is basically the kind of the hand gestures of Kembangan. Okay, so that's what's been currently released at the moment, and that is where you learn all the hand gestures. So that's your first kind of entry into a moving meditation, which is a hard task in itself. You know, even just the seated meditation is hard, but the moving meditation takes it up a little bit more. So after the kind of phase 3, which is, as I said, is a bit more of a holistic phase, you bring in the weapons, so the krumbit, the pisau, so predominantly the male weapons of Silat, which male weapons are more hard weapons, So phase 5, we will go into advanced upright, which is called Garuda. And the Garuda has various different tendon exercises, various different hand drills, various different applications, and that would get linked from Garuda to Kucing, Hanimal, Buaya, Gurat. So there's a complete linking phase.
So it's more of an internal conditioning phase rather than the external, which is what the phase. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I try not to use words that sometimes would freak people out, because I remember back in the day when mentioning the word internal, it freaked people out, and they'd be like, oh.
Mm-hmm.
But as I said, my teacher had a way of teaching it where you wouldn't get freaked out. It would be something very on a practical level, so you could kind of relate to it. So that is kind of, I suppose, one of the best things that I could say that I had with my teacher, and that is that I could completely relate to him. And I think that's extremely important when you're learning something from someone, that you can relate to it, because otherwise,
Definitely,
you're going to definitely
pointless, really, isn't it? Yeah, you're just not going to. If you can't relate to it, then it's not something you're going to continue with. So it's like trying to force a marathon runner to. Yeah, it's like trying to force a marathon runner to do 100-meter sprints. So
exactly. They're just not made. They're not wired that way. And I think that's the biggest thing that I connected, obviously, with my teacher. But so obviously moving on to phase 6, we go more into the Kembangan, the deeper aspect. So what we would call the 6 forces, because obviously there's 6 forces, right? There's up, down, left, right, in, out. So we would kind of use the methodology of the 6 forces and also the basic lunkers of the Kembangan. So now you've kind of think about it, you've got all your ground training, you've got all your weapons training, the hard weapons, you've got your Garuda training, you've got your Kembangan training, you put that all together in your Kembangan, and then that goes into something called the Sasalan. Now the Sasalan is basically, we call it a circle of where the sparring happens. Now there's more than 25 ways of sparring in the Silat, and basically all that what you've learned goes into that Sasalan training, and that is where the chaos happens. That is where you learn to control yourself. You know, you learn to expand your awareness. You go from anything from multiple attackers to grappling to knife sparring, combat sparring, 2 against 1, 3 against 1. This is where we call it the fruit, where everything goes into. So after that phase, we go into something called Gulat, which is the kind of wrestling of Silat. So I was taught various different ways of Gulat from my teacher, which is a kind of Sundanese kind of wrestling. And then from that point, I usually teach something called the advanced ground training. So we go much more deeper into the kind of ground training. Then we're at phase 8, which we go more into male weapons, the machete, the golok. And then I introduced something called Ula, which is the snake, which again is more, it has technical applications, but it's more of a methodology as well. That's a ground aspect of training. Then we've got phase 9 and 10, which 9 is loads more sparring. And then 10, we go into the soft weapons Silat. Called the more female weapons of Silat. So this includes sarong, salindang, desta. They're the more kind of soft weapons of Silat. So that is basically phase 1 to 10. I mean, that's a real quick kind of overview. It's so much more deeper.
So what would obviously it's like some of those are quite deep areas that you're going into. For someone to complete all 10 phases, what sort of training time would that take if they were training consistently with you?
If they were consistent, I would say between 5 to 7 years. 5 to 7 years. I mean, if you think about it, I think most arts, I mean, I have a friend that does jiu-jitsu. He told me it takes an average person 10 years to get their black belt. I mean, although Silat doesn't give belts, it gives things like this, which is the cloth. It gives you things that are relevant to what you've passed. So say, for instance, my student passed how to use the golok. I'd present him with the golok, the machete. So it's kind of similar, but a little bit different. But yeah, it takes an average student 10 years to maybe do that, and it takes maybe a student that's full-time, full out, maybe less than that, maybe
of course,
8 years. But for the CFW Silat, I would say between, if you're regularly training, between maybe 5 to kind of 8 years, in that kind of span, depending on how much you're going through with it.
Of course, yeah. So, and obviously at the moment, well, one, it's with COVID and everything, it's like it's been very difficult for any martial arts teacher. We've all suffered in trying to get our teachings out there, and you're heavily involved on with your online presence.
Yeah, no, that's
tell me a little bit about that side. So
I think before COVID, I think CFW Silat Online was out for around 2 to 3 years before COVID.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I think it was possibly around 2018, 2019 that I kind of got in touch with you, seeing your stuff. So, and was looking at the RMA and stuff like that. So it was where I started. So
it was 2 to 3 years before even kind of COVID came out. But obviously we've got up to 3 phases at the moment, but there's kind of various different add-ons that you can kind of add to that. There's so much on there now. I think there's over 65 sessions on the courses now, because I usually release 5 sessions kind of at a time, and there's actually quite a deep reason why I release 5, and no one really knows about it actually. When we do something in Silat called Bala Bay, okay, some will call it Basang, which means ready, but Bala Bay, usually stand with the hands open.
Okay.
Right? Now, there's five fingers. Okay?
5 elements?
So, 5, yeah, okay, you're kind of getting the idea, because that's exactly how I kind of train. It's with the elements. Not to go too deep into it, but we go from the ground, which is obviously Bumi. Okay. So then we go into wind, which is Garuda. Okay. So you're looking at the more speed side of it. Then you go into water, which is the more Kembangan aspect. Then you can go into fire, which you can have elements of the ground, harimau, the more internal side of it. Then I kind of use something that is going to take me quite a little bit longer, but it's called Ifa, and that is to create space.
Yeah.
And how I use that on a kind of, how I can kind of articulate is that to create space in the body, to create space in the joints, to create space in the mind. So yeah, you hit the nail on the head. There's a reason for why I always release kind of 5. And it's actually this is the first place that I've actually.
I'm the same. I've got within my system, I've got 5 levels of training. So you've got novice is like is nothing. That's when you first start. So then you have your basic, you've got your intermediate, so you've got your advanced, senior student, and then you move on to the instructor session levels. So, but again, to relate with the 5 elements. So
it's interesting, right?
Yeah, absolutely, it is. Yeah, very much so.
This is the first place that I've actually talked about it, so that's quite a good thing. I'm glad it's with kind of talking with you about it.
Yeah. So no, perfect. So, and again, it's like there's like you say, there's meaning behind loads of your methods, and it takes it into a much deeper understanding. So,
nothing is just done for the sake of it. I mean,
absolutely.
My teacher was taught exactly the same way. There was nothing wasted. Everything had a reason why it was taught. There was always something deeper behind what was being. And it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's like was it the you've probably heard of him, the Japanese samurai, Musashi. So he said, "Do nothing that is of no use."
There you go.
And that could relate obviously to movement, to combat, but as martial artists, we want to apply these principles into everything that we're doing within daily life.
There you go. You've hit the nail on the head, and
yeah.
I think that's a huge aspect in martial arts that people need to reconnect with, and that is to find a martial art they can relate to, but can that martial art relate to their life? Can it benefit their life? Can it help them move forward? And I think that's a huge part of martial arts, what a lot of people are looking for.
Yeah, so that's it. I think you'll find that people will be looking for that possibly at a later stage in their martial arts development, depending. But that's going to depend on the teachers or teacher that they've had.
Oh, for sure.
And it's going to be the influence. But if they're
carry on. Sorry.
No, sorry. That's why they're people will stay for 3 or 4. They'll get their black belt and quit because they feel there's nothing else for them. So, but those that hang around and take it into a deeper past the physical curriculum and everything. So
they're looking for that little something.
Definitely, that's it.
Obviously, your start of your martial arts journey is very active. It's very explosive. It's very jumpy. You know, and obviously, as you get older, you want to refine that. And I think that's where in the Silat, the Kembangan comes into real effect, because that is something that you take with you for the rest of your life in your kind of Silat journey, and it's something that you can refine year after year after year. It's not something that ever kind of gets finished. It's not something that closes. It's something that just keeps expanding.
Sure.
And I think that is one of the most kind of unique things about the kind of Penjak Silat, and you know, one of the huge reasons that I continue to still love to train it, although I love conditioning, Kembangan aspect, just you can keep refining it year after year, and it's such a real amazing experience to train it, especially when you've gone through the phases of opening your joints, expanding your awareness. It really is a joy. It really is a joy to train.
Good. So let's jump back, because we kind of we went off topic a little bit. So you've got your online training, you've got 60 plus lessons available. Lessons available already up there. You've got, well, obviously I know because I'm in part of the groups.
Yes.
But for those that are listening, you've got people training all across the world now, haven't you?
Yes, I think we've got from Dubai, we've got Canada, we've got various places in Europe, Scotland,
Russia. Russia, I believe. So
Russia, got quite a big presence in Russia. I mean, on YouTube, the stats on my YouTube, Russia's a huge place for Silat. So we've got
global presence. Excellent. So with that, obviously, again, it's like we can't not talk or have it as part of the topic, but COVID has obviously knocked a lot of it. But a year or so down the line, once everything's back to normal, I should say, is your plans then to get out there on the seminar circuit again?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've got a few people that have messaged so far wanting seminars as soon as this obviously lifts. So yeah, definitely, we'll be getting back on the seminar, because the seminars are so unique, because I just get to meet people, and I think that's the part that I really miss at the minute, because although the online's great, and I think that goes for you and pretty much everyone, it's the same thing. You really want to connect back with people, because there's only so much you can do talking to a camera. I mean, I'm going to put out from phase 1 to 10 online for sure, and you know, you can progress at your own level on that, and you can get your graduations, but the seminars will hold the kind of more deeper stuff where I can connect with people. So definitely.
Even within the seminars, obviously there's ways and means that we can perfect and correct people's postures and positions.
Yeah, everything.
But online, but there's nothing like the hands-on experience, is there?
So it's just being around people, right?
It's feeling that energy as well, isn't it? So it's feeling that energy. So energy, and that buzz.
Really important. But yeah, just to be, you know, with your friends training on a seminar is, you know, when you're doing a 4 5, 6, 7, 8 hour seminar over a weekend. You know, there's nothing quite like it. It's amazing experience.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, when I was doing the ones in Germany, they were amazing. You know, across Europe. I've done seminars in the UK. So yeah, it definitely will be getting back to seminars, because I am releasing a teachers training course, which will be coming out in the next couple of weeks. So, you know, obviously we are global at the minute. So yeah, seminars are definitely something that I will be back to, for sure.
Cool. Excellent. And so is that pretty much going to be tying up your time now? Is this,
I mean,
yeah. Would you think it's like, have you thought about opening a class or anything like so in London, or will you want to concentrate on promoting yourself globally?
I think I've done the kind of class in the UK experience, and I feel I would rather kind of concentrate on the seminars, just so I can spread more of the Silat. I don't want to be tied down to kind of one area, because I feel that this particular type of Silat, you know, it needs to get out there as much as it can. It can benefit so many people on a holistic kind of approach, or a self-defense approach, or a conditioning approach. You know, it has so much to it, or even the meditation side. So yeah, definitely want to get out there and get it out as far as I can. Obviously, pre-corona, I was full-time with the Silat. It was my full-time job, and it actually still currently is, along with the PT. I am a full-time martial arts kind of teacher, online and physical. So yeah, definitely will be getting out there and getting them seminars.
Good stuff. I am a bit conscious of the time, because I know we're both busy. We're both busy guys. So to start rounding up, what would be how would people find you on sort of like social media? So I know Facebook is obviously the most popular one for you, but
yeah, we have Facebook, we have Instagram. You can get me on Instagram. I can give you the link to that. Obviously, I have the website where you can get the programs as well. We have a YouTube. I can give you all the links for that. But we are, CFW Silat in general is quite heavily out there on the social media scene. So it's quite probably easy to pick me up out there. But I'll pass the links on.
Yeah, but yeah, do, because what I'll do, I'll get them into the notes for the podcast, and we'll get them onto the YouTube sites. So just so everyone's aware, we're going to get this on the podcast up on YouTube, and we'll get it onto the podcast as well. The podcast you can find on Spotify. I think we're on sort of like Apple Podcasts as well, and most of the main ones. So we're very much, you know, you're our very first guest. To have on the podcast, so it's it is very much, it is really appreciated. So, and I know you obviously your time's valuable, so you've got your family as well. But that's brilliant. So we'll start wrapping up there, I think, Stu. But your time's much appreciated. We'll get it out there. So, it's been really good to hear and to get some deeper understanding of where you're taking your Silat and CFW as well. So much appreciated, and just really thanks very much for your time, brother. It's really been really good. It's been an interesting hour. So you take care, and I'll get it all sorted out, and we'll get the posts up and online.
Look forward to it.
You take care. Perfect. Thank you very much, mate. So
thank you.
Take care. All the best. All the best to the family as well.
And you, brother.
Cheers.
See ya.